Welcome to Right on Track, a songwriting podcast. Thanks to Tone for tuning in. I'm Demi Michelle Schwartz, and I'm thrilled you're joining me on my songwriting journey. So kick back and relax, don't fall flat, and remember, stay right on track. Hello everyone, welcome back to Right on Track. I am so excited for this episode because joining me today is a very special guest who I have been wanting to have on the show for a very long time, and she's finally here. Please welcome Emme Lentino.
Hey, thanks so much, Demi,
Of
for
course.
having me on the show. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Of course. No, I've been wanting to have you on for a very long time, so I'm very excited you're here, and we are going to be chatting all about anxiety and self-esteem, and this is going to be fantastic. But before we get into this, can you share with everyone a little about yourself and your journey with music so far?
Sure. So I'm originally from America. Grew up in Salem, Oregon. A singer-songwriter. Been writing music since I was a little girl. Did a lot of theater, and have always loved connecting with audiences in live performance. Always had a really active imagination. Love dressing up. That's probably explains the theater. And I moved to New Zealand about over a decade ago. And so this is now my home, and I love nature. I spend a lot of time in nature. It really does kind of help make me feel zen. Have a strong faith, love people, and I'm excited to, just continue this journey with everyone alongside virtually. And it's great to chat with you, Demi.
Of course. Yeah, awesome. I've always wanted to go to New Zealand. It looks gorgeous there.
It's very beautiful, I have to say. It really is a beautiful place.
Yeah. So awesome. So let's dive into our chat. Can you kick things off with a great quote by Chelsea Handler?
Sure. I still get anxiety about things I have to do professionally, and I'm pretty sure I always will. Knowing that's part of the process helps me focus not on the worry itself, but on the sense of accomplishment I'll feel afterward. I get more from going through with something than from walking away. Chelsea Handler.
This is perfect. So what does this quote bring up for you as you're reading it?
Yeah, I think immediately I feel a sense of being seen. I feel really, really drawn to what she talks about how when you do have anxiety, it's not about the actual anxiety itself. It's about being able to get through to the other side, and that she will feel better. And I think this is where I feel like it relates to me as well. Having anxiety about things like performances or recording or even like chats with people, but then knowing that it will feel so great to have accomplished those things. And that's what the focus is. And I feel that she's so eloquent. I mean, obviously she's an author. So she has a whole book that she's written, or a couple books that she's written on this very subject. But I think in particular, it's so relatable.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. I love how the focus is on sometimes it can be easier to just walk away and not face fears or stress or anxiety. But once you push through that and see the accomplishment, I think for me personally, like when I started and really struggled with getting into the music industry and doing interviews and performing and all of that, I was just so scared and it was just so hard to get started. But I think once I pushed through the anxiety a couple of times, I started to see, oh wait, I can do this. This is just all in my head. I'm making up these scenarios in my head that what could happen if I do bad or this or that. And I think it's such like a mental block sometimes, but I think the more that we push through that and see that we are capable of doing so many things, then the anxiety starts to diminish a little bit.
Totally. And I think, like you said, it's actually getting off our feet and stepping forward into the things that probably are really scary. But once we get into that space, it does become easier. Not always. I think there's still are times when perhaps those we're stepping into something that isn't right for us. And why I bring that up is that I think anxiety also comes from getting involved in too many activities and or taking on things out of guilt, saying yes to something when you're not truly either wanting to do it, or you're not in a place to do it, and you say yes anyway. And then yes, I think in those aspects, sometimes you have to say, I need to now bow out. I need to exit. So um, doesn't happen very often, I don't think, but I think it definitely is something just to mention that sometimes when we have anxiety, it's not just because we're supposed to keep it going.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like ourselves going, I think you need to exit immediately.
Yeah, I love what you brought up there because that's a great transition into the first big thing I wanted to talk about. The whole thing of like, as artists, we feel like we have to do everything. And if we don't do something, it's like, maybe that was a missed opportunity. I should have done it. But I've really struggled with, like, I've had friends constantly say to me, like, how do you do all this stuff? Like, take breaks, stop putting more on your plate. And I feel like I'm just so driven and motivated, but at the same time, I get stressed out and anxious about things because I give myself all these deadlines and there's all these people I need to stay in contact with. And I feel like that just really gets in the way. The anxiety gets in the way sometimes of like not being able to focus on what I have to do, especially creative things. Like if I'm anxious, I cannot write songs well. If I'm anxious, I'm not going to do well in an interview. So it's kind of like that constant battle of, as artists, we have to do all these things, but once we cross a line and put too much on our plates, then it starts to interfere with our creativity. And so I feel like that's something we're always having to deal with back and forth.
Absolutely, and we have to come back to the love of what and why we're doing something. I mean, creative people are creative are creative because it is the self expression, and I think that that is the most important part of the journey is the art that you're creating. And we do have to prioritize. We do have to sometimes say, okay, it's just not possible to do everything at this moment. This is a season where I'm going to develop my craft and my songwriting and I'm going to record. Then the next part is, obviously you have to market that. And perhaps there's a friend or someone that has that skill set that has a farther reach than I do that can assist with something that I'm doing. I think that it's about being diversifying our skills, but also knowing when we need to take a step back and go, okay, is this interfering, like you said, is this interfering with my art form? Is this keeping me from actually doing what it is that I love to do? And if it is, I need to either reprioritize or take some of the burdens off my shoulder and go, well, I've done what I can do right now today, and tomorrow's a new day. I'm going to start over.
Yeah. No, for sure. I love that perspective. And I think it's also like setting boundaries and having a routine because when you're doing so many things, not just music related, but other things in your life that you have to dedicate time to, you have to be mindful of where you're spending your time, what actually requires time right now, prioritizing. And I think focusing on the things that are most important can definitely help with relieving stress and anxiety because instead of looking at a list of 50 things that have to get done in the next like couple of weeks, you're only focusing on, okay, these 10 things have to be done by next week. That's more manageable. So time management also plays a role, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Time management is our friend.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, a little bit ago, you were mentioning performance anxiety with like performing and recording. So, can you share a little more about your own personal experience with overcoming these anxious feelings while performing?
I think probably going back to my childhood and just doing a lot of theater, and probably at that time I wasn't aware of what anxiety was, or they just called it like the nervous jitters, or you'd get butterflies in your stomach. And I always thought of that as actually a positive thing because it meant that obviously I knew that something magical was about to happen. And I was able to parlay that into a performance or into a character. And probably being other characters, and especially in theater, you're not being yourself. So you sort of put on a different form of, you can kind of set aside any anxiety. And I think as I've gotten older and I've done obviously performances as me and as sharing intimate, vulnerable songwriting with people, I think it's every situation is different. And so it's probably hard for me to pinpoint exactly what I've done to kind of overcome. But at the end of the day, I knew that nobody else was going to pretend to be me that night to sing. And I didn't want to disappoint anyone, but I also knew that it was an opportunity to share a connection and to really tell stories. And if there was one person out there that might benefit from something that I sang about, or talked about, that that was actually going to be like the most beautiful thing. And so, kind of like what Chelsea talked about in her quote, that, rather than concentrating on the worry itself, looking at the end result, which was to share and to kind of get out there and accomplish something. In my case, it was more about that connection with someone that maybe really needed a positive message, that that kind of got me through to the next bit. I think with as time has gone on, especially with the pandemic, and live performances were few and far between. Mainly, it was recording and or being interviewed live. Did a lot of live on TV kind of appearances, and I think for that, I noticed that uh, what fueled the anxiety was the fact that you sort of were just at home. There was no there was no real cool set. You're
Oh,
talking to someone on the
yeah.
TV set that has the whole thing, and I think it was more the gosh, I don't know how professional this looks, but I'm going to do my best. And it was more just like I noticed that I laughed a lot because I'm someone that does laugh, and sometimes it's out of nervousness. And so I think that what I realized was that at the end of the day, this was just a human being that was taking time out of their busy schedule to chat with me, and that was what I focused on. I tried to not think about anything else. And I think that that's probably my piece of advice in this very long essay that I've told, is
Yeah.
that when we can focus on other people and not what they're going to think of us, but how we can help them. And if there's something that we are going to say, do, or sing about that will make that person or those people feel uplifted, it is totally worth the anxiety and the butterflies because it's really special. And I agree that probably I'll never, like Chelsea said, there'll probably be always some amount of anxiety. But I think that that is just part of, for me, that is part of the journey. Um, it's when it becomes debilitating that obviously that's the tricky part.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you said a lot of great things. And I think what it all kind of boils down to is the mindset and the way you approach it. And I think the thing with anxiety and these nervous butterflies with performing, the interesting thing is like, if we didn't get anxious, I think that would be kind of weird. Like, not over the top anxious, but like, if you don't feel some kind of nervous rush or anything like that, I kind of take the nervous energy and the performance anxiety as I care about this so much and I want to do a good job.
Yes.
And so I think I'm kind of seeing it as this is just validation for how much I love what I do. And so when I get anxious and nervous, that's just showing, okay, I really care about this. And with me, with the performances, it's kind of interesting because I'm classically trained in piano. And so before I even started doing songwriting and being an artist myself, I did classical recitals and competitions, very, very complex classical pieces, and being in a very professional setting, in a concert hall playing sonatas and all these crazy pieces, that was very anxiety inducing. And when I went to college for music and English, I felt it even more being surrounded by so many talented musicians. But I think in turn that just made me a stronger person because I didn't see those other musicians as competition. I saw it as we're all great musicians and we're here to support each other, but I want to believe and prove that I have the right to be here too. And so it's like that self worth, kind of self esteem, the other side of what we're going to be talking about. And I think through going through that with my classical piano, when I started doing songwriting and being an artist, I feel like what I took from that whole experience translated into this. So I don't feel like I get as anxious anymore, but it's definitely still there because I care about what I'm doing so much.
Yeah, I think that I think that what you spoke about is really cool. I think that the confirmation within our nervous system, our central nervous system,
Yeah.
that obviously that we do care about what we're doing, and we care so much that we're having like a physical response. And I think the other cool thing is that sometimes, I think about how we're not robots, so we have responses that are human,
Yeah.
and that's so special.
Hmm.
And so that means that all the bells and whistles that come along with
Being
with
real.
with that those human emotions and feelings are what makes it so special and so worthwhile.
Yeah, for sure. Another angle of the anxiety in the industry I want to briefly talk about is interactions with others, like music industry professionals, during networking and trying to market ourselves, because I feel like that brings a whole other level of this. So, what have been your experiences with this?
They've been varied, I think, because I've been doing this since I was a kid, and a lot of the the big performances that I did when I was younger were in front of politicians and fundraisers, and there was a lot of pressure at a very young age when I was performing. And I think what I learned is that being able to really connect with people, regardless of being able to sell your skills, so to speak, or what do they call it, the elevator pitch.
Yeah.
I think when you set all of that aside, other human beings are in the same space. Everyone is on their own journey and their own experience, and we are basically intersecting with people at different times, and we don't always know what someone else is going through. And so I think sometimes the pressure comes from thinking, wow, this is so and so and they're ahead of this, and wow, and you get nervous because you're thinking about the titles and you're thinking about how important they are. And at the end of the day, they're a human being. They have to get up in the morning. They have to rush around. They may have spilled their coffee. They may have, I mean, all of these things that everyone goes through, right? I mean, our lives are a bit of a comedy show, so
Yeah.
we're not the only people that are having those things. So when we meet someone, instead of it being, oh my goodness, it's like, hey, we're intersecting right now. This is really cool. Let's take a moment. And if there's a couple minutes of an interaction between you and this person, that's really special. It may stay with them later on, or it may not, because they're just on to the next thing. But in that time, you're intersecting. And I think it's the celebration of two lives merging, even if it's for a few seconds. And in that time, it's eye contact, it's being gracious and listening, it's learning something from that moment, and smiling. I think that smiling can be something that is so, it can melt a thousand frowns. It really can. When you smile at someone, you look at them in the eyes, you take a deep breath, and if it's your opportunity to speak, clearly state, say who you are, and it's so lovely to meet you, and have a beautiful day. Just something that is a sincere interaction. That's going to go a long way, because again, it's a human experience. It's not about who someone is or what they've done. It's being respectful and being gracious. And I think that those are the things that, since I was a kid, I've tried to, well, I've focused on. And even as I've gotten older and I've met interesting people, and yes, they've might have been famous, and yes, I would get like tongue tied and I might have talked too fast. I've just gone, you know what? This is part of it. This is my Lucille Ball moment. They maybe they'll have a laugh about it later on. Maybe I can be someone that they have a giggle about. But you know what? That's cool. That's okay. Because I can't take it back. But I've had this great experience. It was a few seconds with this person intersecting with their life. And I'm gonna celebrate that.
Perfect. Wow. I love everything you said. So inspiring. It was so refreshing, I think, to hear you take this perspective, because people always put such a heavy emphasis on professionalism, be very proper, all those things, like you're going to a job interview and all that. But I think, like you said, at the end of the day, like everybody's human. We're all people just living our lives. And professionalism, yes, there are like things to that we need to keep in mind, but at the end of the day, it's just being a good person. Like, you shouldn't have to really think about certain things. If you're just genuinely a good person, you will just like talk to that person as if they were a friend or anybody else, while being professional about it. So I think that's absolutely fantastic, because I completely agree. Like, I've definitely spoken to some people who are higher up, and I'm thinking about like who they are, their title, but no, like they're just a person who is taking time out of their day to talk to me. And I'm always about like, no matter what it is, like an email exchange or face to face with somebody, no matter what it is, no matter who they are, my focus is always on like making it meaningful and just building a genuine relationship, because I feel like that's the basis of everything, and relationships in this industry are so important. So focusing on that and being a good person rather than what you think they can do for you. It's always about, okay, what can I
Hmm.
do for them and how can I build this relationship, and then see where it goes. Plant the seed, and if it grows, it does. If not, then at least you made a positive impact on someone's life that day.
Yeah, I agree, and I have to say with what you're talking about building relationships, 100% agree. And sometimes, we also have to know when when it's appropriate to either continue or to just let them be.
For
I
sure.
think that everybody's smart enough to kind of feel the energy shift. So if we are pursuing something, I think we have to keep in mind, that everybody has boundaries
Yeah.
like we do, and not a maybe or a silence or someone not being, not responding isn't a affront to us. It's not something that we should be insulted by. We should take it for what it is, that again, in that intersection of time, perhaps it's just not meant to be right at the moment.
Yeah.
And if it will either come back later on. There'll be an opportunity when the time is right. But I think I really want to encourage people to not feel like they have to push to a point where they're, infringing on someone's. I don't mean time, but I just think read the signs, read the room, as they
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that there are times when it's appropriate to make a suggestion. Hey, I've got this, da, da, da. And then there are other times when you just have to really listen. There are a lot of times people are telling us a story, or they're sharing something with us, even if it's a quick interaction. And I think it's important to really listen to what they're saying, and then proceed appropriately.
For sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. Perfect. So, something you said in there is a perfect little transition into talking about self esteem, because I feel like sometimes when we're having interactions with people and it just doesn't unfold the way we envision, we can think, oh, did I do something wrong? Maybe it's me. Maybe I'm not
Hmm.
worth it. Maybe I'm not good enough, blah, blah, blah. And so that definitely translates into the self esteem struggles that we have as artists and songwriters. So, for people listening who have challenges with feeling worthy and with keeping their self esteem on a healthy level, what advice would you give them?
I think, and that's such a great question, and it's a subject I'm really passionate about because I probably realized later on in life that self-esteem was something that I needed to work on. And when I realized that, I could see patterns of behavior and sort of things that I had done that obviously were pointing to the fact that I hadn't felt that great about myself. So I guess the answer to that is a simple. It is simple. Is that not everything is about us, and when we accept that, in fact, most things are not about us. When we accept that and really fully realize that probably most of the things that we feel we could be offended by, or we could feel that someone has passed over us or hasn't seen us, it really has nothing to do with us. It has to do with that. If you can imagine like two cars on a freeway, and one's going fast and one's going slow, there's no offense taken when that person passes. I mean, yes, it's annoying, right? But it's not it's not about them not liking your car, or that or they think that all these different things. They're not even thinking about you. They're going along and they're racing forward, and then you're thinking, oh my gosh, what's wrong with and it's just, it actually has nothing to do with you. They are trying to get to where they need to go, and they happen to be alongside you for that period of time. I think it's really important to not get hung up on other people's reactions, because most of the time they either notice didn't notice they were sharing a space, or they were on their own path and they happened to intersect with you at a time when maybe they were, you know I mean, it's easy to get caught up in those things. I myself understand that completely. I'm a people pleaser. It is my default button. I immediately go to that place of like, oh no, is everyone okay? How can I help? And I have to go, all right, it's actually not about you. Yes, you can help, but maybe that person is just speeding by, and they just need to keep going. And you might see that same car that sped around. They might pull off the side of the road, and they might need some help then. Maybe they have a flat tire and you can go, "Hey, I can help you." But I don't know that there's a car analogy here, but just I think being able to have a happiness and a self-respect and that full sense of, I really love what I'm doing. I'm proud of myself. Whether anyone liked what I did, I like it. I like it. And I'm really feel satisfied with the work that I've put into it. When we can walk into situations with that, not with ego, but with this sense of, I'm really feel good about what I'm doing, then what someone else's reaction is, or what someone, or what we think or infer their reaction is, doesn't, it doesn't make or break us. It becomes like a side dish, or it might be, it's not the full enchilada, if you will. It's
Yeah.
just, it becomes this kind of, yeah, I think. And the other thing I would say is about social media. I would say that it's very, very important to have a healthy, this is with any indie artist or anybody in the entertainment industry, especially if you're, like a much younger person than me. I think having a healthy relationship with social media, and what does that mean? What does that look like? It means and looks like different things for different people. But for me, it means making sure that I post what I feel is necessary, and I share, and it's a way to engage with people. It's a great way to engage with other artists and other people in the industry, but also listeners. That's the most important. If no one's listening, then you're not doing music. But you're connecting with people, and it's beautiful. But then it's time to take a break, go in nature, spend time with your family, do things that you love. Because again, what someone says or what someone thinks about you in terms of that split second of a post that you've made is really not any sort of indication of who you are in real time, right? It's
Mhm.
the best of real. So getting caught up in those moments and making that everything about what you're doing is something that will be disappointing. It will be something that is not sustainable. So my advice to people is to really um, make sure that you only share the things that you're fully comfortable with. And by saying that is, it's not a Dear Diary entry. I know that sometimes people use it as that, and that's beautiful. But oftentimes those are the same people that perhaps feel um, they burn out easily because everyone's kind of knows what's going on intimately, and it can be a very uh, uncomfortable place to be if you constantly feel like you have to share everything. There's got to be some sort of sacred things that are just for you and probably the special people in your life, so that you can protect yourself and you can have a healthy relationship with social media. And that would be all I can say on the subject.
So much. Oh, that it
I know, it's like,
really?
where do we start? Where do we end?
That was perfect. I love it. So inspiring. I think like everything you kind of said just came down to like it all starts with you and the choices that you make, the outlook that you have on life. And I think the thing is like no matter what we believe, the only thing we really have control over is our own thought processes and how we react to things. And so I
Hmm.
feel like if we can train ourselves to not overreact to something that can seem like a big thing to us but nothing to the other person because it they weren't thinking much about it or didn't have any impact on them, if we just take a step back and say okay, this is just one moment in one day, this doesn't define me or my music or anything. But it can definitely be hard, especially like just starting out. I've been only doing this for 2.5 years, and so negative comments still kind of get to me. I don't get a whole lot, but when I do, it's like that one negative comment stands out among 200, positive ones. But I've had to get to the point of not focusing on those things and not letting that change how I feel about myself and my worthiness, because negative self-talk is terrible. And so I've been trying to not go down that road. But I think it's really important to always remember, like, just do what's best for you and set boundaries and don't put everything online. When I was younger, I did, like high school, like my Twitter was my diary basically. And now
Yeah.
I just like don't really like it's more professional. My social media is much more professional now because like I'm dealing with stuff that I don't need the whole world to know about. I don't need that added anxiety and that scrutiny or whatever. And so I think, you know, everything you said about social media and using it healthy in a healthy way, and not taking everything said, whether on there or in person or in emails, to heart, I think that's all very valid. So perfect.
Yeah, and I think it's also timing. Like you said, it's not taking everything on board, but also I think it's like when you talk about like your own worthiness, and it just like our mental health is so important to protect. And there are going to be days when we're fragile. Everyone is. Every single person has a fragile day, or a fragile days, or a fragile week, for a variety of reasons. And I think it's about being sensitive to ourselves, the way that we would be for someone else, right? If you saw a friend crying, you you wouldn't push them to go and then give a huge speech in front of thousands of people, right? You'd
Yeah.
you'd you'd let them, you'd soothe them, you want to soothe yourself as well. You want to go, hey, I'm having a this is probably not the time to be on Twitter at 2 a.m. when I'm feeling a little low.
Yeah.
Maybe I really need to, go within myself and really have this time to just kind of, yeah, lick my wounds, and then I'm gonna feel better tomorrow. I'm
Yeah,
gonna feel better tomorrow, and I think that's important too. Just that,
for sure.
yeah, we have to protect our mental health.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think like this is a great point to wrap up on, like self love and being kind to yourself and just noticing that you are human and whatever you're going through, you have a right to cry and feel what you need to feel. And that doesn't mean you're weak or anything. It doesn't mean you're less worthy or anything like that. I just think like being kind to ourselves and treating ourselves with love and respect is so, so important.
It is. I totally agree, Demi, and I think that you've touched on something that is it's so key in our lives. We have to, we be gentle and kind to others and show them respect. And every person is so important in this world. But we're in that too, being able to respect ourselves and being kind to ourselves. Self love is, as Whitney Houston once said, the greatest love of all. And it certainly is. It definitely comes down to how we treat ourselves, is pretty much how it'll be with other people as well.
For sure. Well, Emmy, it was absolutely lovely having you on the show. Can you share with everyone where they can find you on social media and listen to your music?
Sure, and thanks so much
Of
for having me
course.
on the show, and just this intimate and open chat. It's been
Yeah.
awesome. So I'm on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, just at Emme Lentino. That's Lentino. They can go to www.emmylentino.com, and Spotify, Deezer, Amazon, Apple Music, iTunes, all of the major platforms, and also YouTube. They can find all my music. And Dive is the latest single that's out now, and music videos up on YouTube, and as well as the music. So thanks again for the support. And I want to wish everyone a beautiful week, and you are loved.
Oh, thank you. Absolutely lovely. I mean, it was fantastic having you. Listeners, thank you for listening to this very inspiring conversation with Emmy Lentino. And of course, until next time, stay
Stay
right on
right on
track.
track.